That's much better. I'm Joe Harbaugh, and I'm the Dean of the Shepherd Broad Law Center here at Nova Southeastern University. And on behalf of my colleagues at the Law Center and at the university, I want to welcome you to this 16th Annual Conference of CALI. You are the backbone of legal education today, because we have certainly built modern legal education through technology. Whether we're talking about the library or the classroom to distance education, technology is what we turn to as we expand the reach and the depth of today's legal education product. I remember many, many years ago, at the very beginnings of CALI, that there were very few in legal education who saw the potential of technology to transform what it is we do in the law school. It was the perseverance of the early pioneers of CALI that brought us to where we are today. And we are very proud at the Shepherd Broad Law Center that we are a part of this ongoing and expanding movement to introduce technology in the classroom, in the library, and beyond. We have several of my colleagues, Ron Brown, Joe Gorman, Leslie Cooney, Angela Gilmore, and others have been CALI authors, and we've had members of our team serve on the board of CALI. So we are especially excited that you are here with us for this weekend. We're very pleased that Alberto will not dampen your enthusiasm or destroy the heart of what you will be doing, and that we will have a typical early summer Florida to greet you. A lot of sun. Hope you have some time for surf and sand. And ignore the humidity. That's just part of living here in South Florida. I want to thank my colleagues here at the university and at the Law Center for preparing for this event and serving your needs. Lisa Smith Butler, the Assistant Dean for Library and Information Technology at the law school, and her entire technology team have been working hard to make our greeting warm and welcoming. I'm also very pleased that we have two of my university colleagues here, Virginia McLean, who's the Vice President for Technology, and Vice President Don Riggs, librarian and head of this wonderful building and the services. They and their staff have helped us every step of the way. Please, there are a lot of us here from the law school who will be around. Please stop us, ask us questions, directions, and the like. Have a wonderful conference, and I will see you. I'll see you around campus. Now let me turn this over to your executive director, John Mayer. John.
Before he runs out, happy birthday, Dean. How's that sound? Pretty good? A little higher. Good morning! Good morning! Welcome to the 16th Annual Conference for Law School Computing. Let me take care of housekeeping first. 1:30 bus from Nova to the airport on Saturday. If you want to be on that bus, sign up at registration. All right? There is one T-shirt in one bag that has been signed personally by all members of CALI staff. if you got that T-shirt, you get free registration at next year's conference. All right. All the T-shirts and all the bags were extra large. If you're not extra large, you can exchange that T-shirt for a medium or a large after lunch, all right, in the afternoon. Wait till we get through the morning registration stuff. Deb wanted me to tell the CEB folks that the CEB, the CALI editorial board meeting, which takes place during lunch, is in a different room. It's in the second floor faculty lounge. So grab your lunch if you're on the CEB and go to the second floor faculty lounge. These things that you got, you may think they're squeezy toys. No, what they are is inconsiderate cell phone people deterrent devices. So if anybody's cell phone goes off during a session, I give you permission, this is yours by the way, I give you permission to toss it at them. All right? Good. This is an informal conference. And there's probably a lot of people here. Actually, show of hands. How many people have never been to this conference? Oh my goodness, I had no idea. Well, this is what I want you to do. Everybody, even if you've been to this conference or haven't been to this conference, I want you to all say hello to the person on your left. All right, now I want you all to say hello to the person on your right. Good. This is an informal conference, and the real value is in the meeting of the people and the sharing of ideas. And so normally there's this thing called social space or distance. You don't interrupt people. You don't join into conversations where you're not explicitly permitted or asked in. I'm going to lower those barriers for these 3 days. Feel free to join in conversations without being, would you like to join this conversation? Feel free to go up and talk to people you don't know, to look at their name badges, to ask them what they do, and to learn things about their institution or about their job or things like that. That's the point of this conference. What do you do? I'm face. So I give you that permission to talk to other people. All right, you all got one of these inside of your bags. 6 little places for stickers. We're running a little encouragement or inducement campaign for you to visit the many sponsors we have. If you visit the sponsors, they have stickers that they will stick on there. All right? And on Saturday morning at breakfast, what we'll do is we'll pluck these out. There'll be a place to put them once you've filled up with 6. There'll be a place to pluck them out, and then we're going to, if they're all filled out with 6, then we'll be raffling off 3 2-gigabyte iPod Nanos, 1 Kodak EasyShare C530 digital camera, 5 megapixels, 5x digital zoom, sponsored by Aspen Publishers, thank you, 1 Waterman pen, sponsored by B&A, and a $100 gift certificate, sponsored by CDW. All right? The evaluations, yes, we want to know what you think of this conference. It's all being handled magically, electronically at the CALIcon06.classcaster.org blog. All right? There's a blog post there for every single conference session, and Elmer tells me that there's a link where you can vote early and often, sort of like karma points, but I think he renamed it to evaluation, for whether you liked or disliked or however you felt about a session. That feedback is useful to us. It's useful to us so that we can learn how to give better presentations. That is to say, we as the speakers. So please do provide your input on that. All right. All right, let's get ripping. I have so many people to thank. I'm really happy that these sponsors, that we have so many sponsors this year, because I welcome them to our community. They are part of our community. They're helping us. Apparently, their products are supposed to help us do our jobs, and things never quite work right out of the box. We have to integrate them into the way we do things, and so I urge you to visit them and ask them questions and give them ideas and include them and respect them as part of our community. Isoprime, Hein Online, BNA, Xtegrity, Apresso, or AnyStream. Apresso, I think, is the product name. Vmix, VitalSource, ExamSoft, CDWG, Software Secure, Thomson West, AppointLink, 1440, 3M, and Aspen Publishers. Folks, thank you very much for sponsoring our conference. All right. Man, I can't thank enough the folks at Shepherd Broad Law Center, Law Library Director Lisa. Of course, at the moment I have to say it, I'm going to go Smith-Butler, and it's probably Butler-Smith. It's Smith-Butler. I've been saying it all week. They really pulled out all the stops. They put more things in the bag than we thought were possible. They've added signs, people, they've thrown resources at us, and I think that as smooth as this conference is going to run, I'm knocking on wood, I think it will be because of them, not because of the usual disorganized CALI staff. Hi, Elmer. Anyhow, thank you, Lisa. This is so far been fantastic, and I will take every opportunity at a podium to thank you and your staff. Oh, good. This is fun. All right, how am I doing? I'm well done. Okay. Rip, Mix, Learn. What kind of goofy theme is that, right? Well, RML, it actually goes back to, we ripped off the theme idea from an Apple campaign, right? Rip, Mix, Burn, back when the iMac came out. But for me, it actually goes back to Napster. When Napster first came out, I was like, oh, this is great. I've got all these vinyl albums for which I legally own the music, but I would like to have it on my computer. And Napster provided me with that legal opportunity to legally obtain those legal digital files. So naturally, I went to and pulled out my favorite album. It's actually the first album I ever bought, Believe in Music, from KTEL, with 22 original hits and 22 original stars, with such great songs as this. Do 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 do. All right. Yeah, who could forget Looking Glass? And this favorite. I love that music. And as I was preparing this, I realized that this is a rip mix because I was too cheap to buy all of those artists' albums, so I bought the album that mixed up all of them together. How appropriate. Well, before you could have rip, mix, learn, you have to have material that's available in some sort of digital format. But that's fortunate because today an awful lot of stuff is being born digital, right? Camera phones outselling digital cameras. Everything we do is increasingly becoming or starting out as a digital artifact. And if it's not starting out as a digital artifact, then it's going to be made digital very quickly. Google's scanning books, Yahoo's scanning books, and if that's not good enough for you, scan your own. This is a product from a company at atiz.com. It's a DIY, a do-it-yourself book scanning station. It costs about $3,500. You provide the cameras. All right? If that's not good enough for you, you can build your own with your grandmother's walker and some Lego blocks. With full CAD Lego drawings available on the internet, courtesy of Make Magazine. I kid you not. All right, let's talk about that R there. R for me is not rip, but find. How can I find digital things that I might want to include in my courses? Well, fortunately, there's a lot of places to find digital materials. iTunes, Flickr, YouTube, Google Video. Sphere is a search engine for blogs that has a sophisticated algorithm. And one of my favorites is iStock Photo, where hundreds of thousands of amateur photographers and illustrators put material up with a simple license so that you can download for about $1 to be used in PowerPoints like this. An awful lot of the pictures that you'll see in this talk were from iStock Photo because I didn't take them. All right, M. M is not mix, it's about tools. And tools like Audacity that help you to manipulate this digital information. But there's more going on here, right? These tools are getting more like power tools. So things like Classcaster and Twen actually aggregate collections of tools. The ability to blog and to podcast, to upload and convert, to link, to search, to tag, all in one tool interface. But I think there's even another layer on top of that. And that layer, I don't have a name for it, but the word that springs to mind for me is automaticity. Where these tools are getting easy enough for even faculty to use. That's not a diss on faculty. They're busy doing hard work of figuring out what to teach. And so what they want is to be able to walk in and press a button. Like what the Espresso Classroom offers, where you walk into a classroom, product placements, right? You walk into a classroom and you press a button and it's automatically recorded, automatically uploaded to a blog, automatically available, no human hands intervention. Or the audio recording scheduling system that Tom Ryan has talked about on Technoids a few weeks or months ago. And we'll be talking about at this conference as well. So that automaticity is this sort of new demand. It's this lowering the barriers to this complex interconnected technology that us techies like to build, but that we could never convince people to use because, well, you have to do this, you have to do this. No, you press the big red button. It's not nearly that simple, but it's getting there, right? All right. So rip and mix in legal education. Well, to look at that, you have to look at the original ripper and mixer, the guy who started it all in legal education, and that was Christopher Columbus Langdell. He was the dean of Harvard Law School in the late 19th century, and he invented the case method. He would gather cases and give them to his students for them to read. He also promulgated the Socratic dialogue in the classroom. But we're really talking about the future or the present now. And so in the present, well, what would Langdell do if he were alive today? I thought you'd get that. Well, a 21st century Langdell, first of all, would go digital. All right? He'd be all over that. He'd have a website, elangdell.org, of course, a nonprofit, right? Langdell was a faculty member. And as a faculty member, he would be able to select cases. He'd select only the cases he wanted, only the ones I'm going to teach. He would be able to put them in any order he wants. He'd be able to change that order. He'd have complete control over that. He would mix in his supplemental materials, and in this digital world, they might be video, they might be podcasts, they might be graphics, they might be links and things like that. And he would self-publish those materials to his students because that's what the web's all about. We're not consumers, we're producers. Everybody's a producer. All right? The other issue there, though, is that for faculty, freedom is control. And that sounds like an oxymoron in some ways, but it's not meant to be. I'm meant to be serious about that. Faculty have to have the control over the educational environment that they provide to their students. They're responsible for that. They feel the responsibility for delivering quality education to their students. And so they need to have the control over how they present the information to the extent that they can. Because, of course, students are taking this material and they're ripping and mixing and learning in their own way. All right. Now, Langdell was also a dean. And I suppose I should make that a lot bigger now, right? And as a dean, he could impose his imprimatur on his faculty, or at least he could lead by example, or he could bribe with stipends or sabbaticals or lighter teaching loads, and he'd get his faculty to do their own self-publishing as well. But as this 21st century Web 2.0 dean, he would say, well, this is rather inefficient. We really need to do something that's more efficient. We need to gather something in a digital way, and we need to centralize these materials into a repository, one central place from which all possible casebooks or all possible course materials could be produced. All right? That's a lot more efficient. And Once you do that, some interesting things become possible. Well, first of all, you would make that all digital. And those things that become possible have to do with learning, but not student learning, not yet, because students aren't the only ones that learn. All right? What I'm talking about is learning about teaching. Teachers learn, right? They learn from each other mostly. They get ideas on how best to teach. They learn from the books and the materials they read. But in this system, there would be like another channel of information. Think of that as not just the course material or not just the material that would be student-facing, but information about that information, meta-information. Sort of a granular, disaggregated teaching guide that says, well, I'm teaching this, I've edited this case down using a law and economics viewpoint or a critical race theory viewpoint or any of the other legal theories that might apply. Because there's communities in legal education that surround those theories, and you need to be able to signal to them or at least tag the material so that they can find it. So it would make sense, in a librarian sense, this would be cataloging. So it makes sense that in this digital repository there would be not just the information, but information about the information. A taxonomy or a folksonomy if you've been reading Clay Shirky lately. That would allow then for other people to see how other people do things. And so that sharing of teaching knowledge. What you would hope would happen is then best practices would sort of be emergent behavior, and people would learn how to would get good ideas from other people's work. We found that this actually works with our CALI fellows. Right? We get 5 or 6 people together. They all individually write their own lessons, but when they show their lessons to each other or when they discuss their lessons, they share ideas. Oh, I have a good example for how you would explain that. This is a great hypo. You know, I do this on the board and it works really well. Because no matter how long you teach, no matter how many years of experience you have in teaching, you can always pick up good tips from other people. And this digital system would hopefully surface some of these things. We would hope. All right, I'm sorry about this. Langdell was also a librarian. Let's get past that fast, John, because as I was doing this that slide, I realized, yeah, F, D, L, oops. Didn't mean it that way. Because for librarians, freedom is sharing. You don't buy books or gather materials into a place so that you can hide them or hoard them or keep them. Your goal is get people in to use them, share them with others. It's a powerful thing. And librarians talk to each other. For 100 years, you've been talking to each other. 100 years this year, right? And so the Langdellian librarians would be talking to the librarians at other schools and saying, you know, our faculty share and your faculty share, why don't we federate this thing into something that's bigger? And the evil librarians would go, let's make it world domination. No. No, that's not true. Because when you have something that's federated like this, or centralized, well then Metcalfe's law kicks in. Metcalfe's law says the value of the network increases exponentially as the number of participants in the network join. All right? All right. So, let's get to the students. What about the students? Yes, what about the students? This is most of what we see of students these days. Well, they're fat with this, right? Hey, digital, go for it. But what's this paper book, paper course material garbage? Those should be digital too, right? Because students are digital natives. They're expecting everything to be electronic coming in. They would love the fact that these things weigh a lot less than their 20-pound backpacks or 50-pound backpacks of casebooks, right? They would love the fact that they couldn't lose their book, or it'd be a lot harder because they could always make electronic copies. They would be able to search their book. That's a duh. They would be able to highlight it. Now, they can certainly highlight paper books, but they would e-highlight their e-books or their e-materials. And those would be extractable and searchable as well, and maybe shareable. Remember Napster. They would be able to listen to podcasts of their books. Huh? Yeah. You've heard of books on tape and things like that. And besides, this material is already digital. Why not books as podcasts? Well, I was doing some experimentation with this with CALI lessons, this podcast. It wasn't working too well because there's too much changing of context going on. But a book has a sort of a stream of thought. So I took a relatively popular case and I decided to do some experiments here. So I call this first one decaf.
At the December term 1801, William Marbury, Dennis Ramsay, Robert Townsend, and William Harper, by their counsel, separately moved the court for a rule to James Madison, Secretary of State of the United States, to show cause why a mandamus should not issue, commanding him to cause to be delivered to them respectively. Their several commissions as justices of the peace in the District of Columbia.
I could see all of you sort of glazing over, remembering law school. Well, even 1803 stilted language, that worked pretty good. And that was produced entirely from a computer, a text-to-speech program. But of course, it's digital, and students are not decaf. Students are caffeinated.
At the December term 1801, William Marbury, Dennis Ramsay, Robert Townsend, and William Harper, by their counsel, separately moved the court for a rule to James Madison, Secretary of State of the United States, to show cause why a mandamus should not issue, commanding him to cause to be delivered to them respectively. Their several commissions as justices of the peace in the District of Columbia.
I followed that. Didn't you follow that? And actually, if you didn't follow it, what I learned in doing these tests is that if you listen for a few minutes, your ear, the software in your brain, trains itself to figure this stuff out pretty fast. Just like it's sort of like adjusting to an accent or to a particular pattern of speech that somebody might have. The point being that this text-to-speech software has come a long way since the Stephen Hawking sounding like voices that you get pre-installed with Windows 3.1 or something like that. Now, the reason I was able to do this is because it was in this rippable, mixable, digital format. And naturally, I wanted to push it to its limits, so I tried the double latte.
At the December term 1801, William Marbury, Dennis Ramsay, Robert Townsend, and William Harper, by their counsel, separately moved the court for a rule to James Madison, Secretary of State of the United States, to show cause why a mandamus should not issue, commanding him to cause to be delivered to them respectively. Their several commissions as justices of the peace in the District of Columbia.
I think that's what we call diminishing returns. So that didn't work so well, but the point is you could give the choice to the student. If you had the course materials in electronic format, you could generate either multiple MP3s, or the student could decide, based on the software that they're using to listen to, the speed of which the MP3 is played back. I could do a 48-hour course in 22 minutes flat. You know, you could just imagine. But really, the situation I imagine is this. The student's sitting there reading, and it's like, ooh, got to get to class in an hour. You know, get on the bus or take the train. And rather than stopping studying, they go pick up their iPod that's already been preloaded with the MP3s of the chapter that they were just reading. They're able to find it because it's chunked appropriately, and they listen to the rest of the chapter on the way to class. Less downtime. Trivial, or easy, or possible at least, within the digital world. All right, what about money? Money. Can we save students money? Well, why bother saving them some money? Well, here's why bother. This is Gerald Hess speaking at ALS in January.
And then finally, 90% of the students who incurred debt will owe over $77,000 at graduation. To tell you the truth, I don't want to think about this. And I know I need to do better than that. But it does scare me.
It scares me too. Sure, it'd be great to save students some money if that was in the equation, right? The California Public Interest Research Group has a study where they say that the average student will spend nearly $900 purchasing textbooks every year. Now, this was not specific to legal education. It was higher ed. But I got to believe we're in that ballpark for our students. And when you're paying tuition in the $30,000 range, maybe another $1,000 isn't such a big deal. But I would like to have that $1,000 back in my wallet if I could. Right? So money would be an issue if we can ease their pain a little bit, if that was sort of a side benefit. But I don't think that would be the prime motivator. So are there any 21st century Langdells out there now? Actually, there's quite a few, right? MIT's got their Open Courseware initiative. Carnegie Mellon's Open Learning Initiative, a collection of cognitively informed, openly available, free online courses and course materials. And you'll notice that I grabbed some of the names of the courses, but there's no law courses there. But, of course, you can just put law and in front of anything and call it a law course. And then there's Rice, which has their connections. And I wanted to point out down here the authors publish and collaborate. Instructors rapidly build and share custom courses. Sounds like 21st century Langdells to me. There's, of course, Creative Commons, and they have an entire education section. You may have heard of the Public Library of Science, which is about open access science journals. And Fred Beshears, who's the senior strategist at UC Berkeley, has been going around the country for the last year talking about the case for Creative Commons textbooks. Well, let me also play you a little bit from a senior research fellow from Canada, Stephen Downs. He's a scary-looking fellow, but that's because he's also a philosopher. But he had something interesting to say here.
Another roadblock is the production of this material. The material that all of you people create, material which I might add is, for the most part, paid for by the government and therefore the people of Canada, is all copyrighted. And if you're publishing papers, you're probably publishing papers in an academic journal and handing that copyright over to the publisher and then paying the publisher for the right to read the stuff that you just created.
Are there any of these 21st century Langdells in law? Sure. We have two vendors here who are displaying e-casebooks or e-book software, 1440 and VitalSource. And there was an article just recently in National Juris talking about these vendors working with Aspen and Thomson West, which is fantastic. The software looks a lot like folio views from 10 years ago. That's what I remember. But I think it's great that it's finally making its way into legal education. No doubt that they are seeing what many of you may or may not be seeing is that there's an increasing number of devices upon which you can apparently read things. The holy grail here is the e-book, e-reader of e-book, the iPod of e-books. That's what I wanted to say. So there's a Palm version, a Pepperpad, the Nokia 770. But what's really supposed to be interesting in the next few months are the e-ink technology e-readers from Sony, IREX, and a Chinese company called Jinka. They were supposed to be available this April. I had pre-ordered them because I wanted to actually include them in my talk, but they keep on pushing the delivery dates back. It's not clear that they're going to be wildly successful, but I think they are going to change the game because for the first time we're going to have devices that do nothing but or are dedicated to the reading of books. And they could be viewed in ambient light. In other words, they don't have a backlight. There's all sorts of things. And by the way, almost all of them will have MP3 playing capabilities as well. But is that the only way that we could get to that? Through the models that I've just shown? For the rest of this talk, I want to suggest to you that there's another path that we could take that could be very interesting and fruitful for us. And let me start by saying that here's sort of where that path goes. I'll point out Ken here and Duke Law with their faculty scholarship repository, where they put up their own faculty papers available to anybody on the internet, essentially open access. Science Commons has something called the Open Access Law Program. Dan Hunter at Wharton is going around convincing law reviews to put their stuff into either to release articles into the Creative Commons license, that they're more widely available. And the Legal Information Institute's WEX, which is a collaboratively built, freely available legal dictionary and encyclopedia. Well, this is Dean Garvey from Boston College, and this is what he had to say about some of these things at ALS as well.
Here's a third, and I don't know where this is going, but I think in the end, this is where the horse is buried. It's about alternative publishers. There's something funny about the economics of legal information. Much of it, perhaps most of it, is produced by the government or by law professors and other legal professionals for nothing, and published in law reviews that are subsidized by law schools, and then collected and organized and indexed by groups like Thomson West and sold back to libraries in serial sets or electronic format at a handsome profit. Why not leave the publishers out of it?
As well said as that was, At the same time that I found that I was listening to that podcast, I listen to a lot of podcasts, I ran across a podcast by Charlie Nesson, Professor Charlie Nesson at Harvard Law School. He's also the head of the Berkman Center and a former member of the CALI Board of Directors. And when I went to grab the podcast to rip for this presentation, I found that there was a video there. So let me offer you this video.
The idea of the core value of the university is to open up research for the public interest. And that it's silly in many ways for us to still be in an environment in which we produce knowledge, we then give it to a for-profit corporation. They then give it back to us for us to vet with peer review. We then give it back to the corporation. They then sell it back to us for a large amount of money. The librarian is feeling squeezed. And then, when I want to use some of it for a class, I need to ask the corporation's permission. This is insanity. If you think, starting out, how would you organize the university? And after all, the university has means. You would organize it so that we handle those functions ourselves.
We handle those functions ourselves. That's an intriguing notion. That's a very open source sort of notion. That's a very bottom-up sort of notion. Well, back in 1994, I was involved in the creation of Folio View's electronic casebooks. And by all measures, it was an extremely successful project. The students loved it. But it's 12 years later, and we could do so much more because we have this thing called the internets that are available to us to bring federated power to these ideas. So in 2006, how might this look? Well, you have to imagine how a book transforms into something that's a networked book. And I'm going to read this to you because it's a great quote. Imagine an online Harry Potter in which readers can keep personal blogs, engage in live chats in the margins, annotate the text collectively, compose alternate endings, and contribute to communal glossaries and repositories of lore. Or an electronic Moby Dick that allows teachers to create a virtual seminar around the text while connecting students to a vast library of scholarly resources. Or a new kind of book, native to the network, that we have not yet conceived, one that employs multimedia forms and grows and changes over time. When I read that, I thought, he's emphasizing fiction and historical fiction here, but this is so much more true for educational texts, because they grow and change over time. There is automatically a community around every educational text that's being taught in a course. This is a picture of Amazon's online reader. You can buy electronic books from Amazon. And the reason why I point it out is you can also highlight things and put little posties. No big deal. But when you save your electronic notes, it also asks you, do you want others to see your annotations? So Amazon is already going down the path that a book is the middle of a community, and the community may want to share these information through tags. Even better, the Institute for the Future of the Book has invited Mackenzie Wark, who's a science fiction author, and he's written an entirely networked book. He's actually writing the book online, and he includes comments about how hard it was or ideas, and he invites people to comment on individual pages, saying, what do you think about this? Should I do this? Fact check, tell me where the typos are. There's an entire community around the book. So you're not just reading the book, you're conversing with it. You're engaging with the book, which with fiction I find a little hard. I want to just read the book on the beach. But on the other hand, I kind of do want to go geek out with the Lord of the Rings folks, right? And so I guess it depends on where your relationship is with the book. Sometimes I just want to be in bed with my paperback, or sometimes I want to be, jabbering with the other fans and things like that. So that's an interesting notion. Now what if, you should all be going, yeah, John, but what about those faculty that don't want to do this electronic thing? Of course. I don't want to do this electronic thing with everything myself. So there's going to have to be some sort of transition from here to there. And I did some research, and there's this company called Lulu.com. Sounds kind of kooky, huh? 2 cents a page, $4 to bind it, $4 for shipping. Do the math, a 500-page book will cost you $18. This book was printed by Lulu.com. I uploaded the PDFs on June 1st. I was running late. I said, ooh, I want spiral bound. I could have gotten perfect bound, could have gotten the saddle stitch thing. And it arrived last Friday, I believe. I think this book cost about $3.20 to be printed because it's not that many pages. Well, that's interesting. Now, before you think Lulu.com is some .com bomb going to go out of business soon, 167,000 books per month so far this year, revenue about $1 million. They're profitable. And the founder, for you geeks, for you Linux folks, is Rob Young. Rob Young was the founder of Red Hat. Serious open source cred now being applied to the print-on-demand service. Now, why would faculty bother with this? Good grief, stop bothering me with these digital things, right? Well, I'm going to claim that they already do this, in a sense. Faculty are blogging like crazy, or a lot of faculty are starting to blog. And on their blogs, if they're not talking about politics, I'm talking about the scholarship-related or the law-related blogs, they're pulling down the most recent cases and saying, here's what I think about it, or check this out, or something like that. And Paul Caron's law professor blogs has dozens of faculty doing just that, which are faculty-to-faculty or scholar-to-scholar communications. The legal theory blog by Larry Solon. Man, this is deep, interesting stuff about legal course, which is not legal course material in of itself. I love Jim Ball's blog because he actually makes taxes interesting. But the real example, the best example, is the fact that faculty, by the dozens, by the hundreds, by the perhaps thousands, are putting materials into course web pages. This is a screenshot from Patrick Wiseman's. Thanks, Patrick. Property. He gave me the password to get in, but not the permission to do this. So that's why I'm saying thanks. This is Property 2 syllabus, and Patrick has done amazing work here. I mean, this is a labor of love. You can connect. He's connected in CALI lessons. When he records the lecture, he connects in the podcast. He'll put in supplemental readings and things like that. All this is course-related. This is practically an online networked book that is marched through by the syllabus, which is the course. All right? So instead of, so the problem, though, is that each of these individual faculty are doing this thing, and it's in sort of their data silos, which is to say it's hard to move information or find information. It's not in a aggregated, tagged, federated repository, and so it should look something more like this. And I'm not suggesting that we build something where everybody does all their blogging in one place or everybody does all their course websites in one place, but rather that the data formats be worked out, or that there be another repository where that information can automatically move smoother or more smooth. All right? So what am I talking about? I'm talking about social software, wiki like BlogAware, Vanity Press, Open Access, Creative Commons, Ajax, Web 2.0. Yes, I'm having trouble getting my head around this too. I'm not sure exactly what this puppy is going to look like. But let me try to walk you through one possible way. So it's a website, right? elangdell.org. It's basically a database full of cases to start with, perhaps. Faculty would come in. These are the authors who want to contribute materials. They would edit cases, add notes, problems, and other things. There would be a tagging system or a taxonomy, perhaps based on the CALI topic grids, because we've developed those with the faculty that write lessons. Other faculty would come in and construct by plucking pieces out and assembling them in a digital way, syllabi, course packs, supplements, perhaps entire casebooks. And those could be squirted off the Lulu where the students could order the paper version, or squirted off to a PDF or an RTF or an HTML so that the student doesn't have to carry those books around. Of course, the idea is not that there's producers and consumers, but that everybody produces and everybody can consume in this ecosystem. Not everybody has to produce or consume the same amount. Some people can produce a lot, some people can produce a little. That's the value, or that's the point of having it in this digital repository, right? There would, of course, be this additional channel of meta information, teaching information. Where's the best place to use this? This is used for a 2-credit torts course instead of a 3-credit torts course, so on and so forth. So the PDFs would go off the Lulu, the HTMLs off to the e-reader. Of course, you could burn in MP3s. But here's where it gets even more interesting once you're sort of in this ecosystem. You could drop the whole thing into a blog, like Classcaster. And then the students could subscribe to that blog. And so you've got that automaticity happening, where the students are subscribing to your class. They're pulling the information on a weekly basis. And they're doing it without lots of visiting of websites. This is all just happening through RSS aggregators, iPods, and so on. All right? That's a powerful notion. So where do you start? Well, it's a chicken and egg problem, right? The place to start is to look at a casebook, and you see that it's got a lot of cases. And so what's one of the things we're going to need to do is have cases to get this started. How many cases? Well, we did a little internal survey where we looked at a lot of different sources to find out how many cases would a typical law student see as they walk through law school. You know, and then expand that a little bit because of variation in things. And we came up with a number of 5,000. 5,000 for the 1L and bar-related courses, the required courses, the core courses. Well, that number's within the realm of possibility. We came up with 15,000 if you were to cover all of law school. Maybe more than that. They could certainly look up more and do more than that when they're doing research, but this is the number that they might typically need to have in their own personal library of materials. Right? So we went out and found a company, caseclerk.com. And Robert Tucker from CaseClerk is here. I think he's up there right now. Hey, Robert. And they've got a pretty good coverage of the law. Databases have depth going back to 1900, over 200 jurisdictions. And they've agreed to license digital versions in XMLized format so that we can begin to investigate this idea of a E-Langdell digital publishing system. All right? One of the big insights that we got from starting this is that a table of contents is kind of like a syllabus. They're both outlines. It's kind of like a blog, which is a timed outline. And then the student takes it and turns it into their own outline. Now, I don't mean they contain the same information. I mean that at a meta format level, they're the same structure. And if they're at a same structure at a meta format level, then in software or in algorithms, we can manipulate them in interesting ways. Software. Software is going to be tough, but I've talked to my intrepid staff, and Sam says, and Elmer, of course, says, no problem. Elmer's taking his happy fun time pills. But I'm not worried because I don't think technology is the big issue here. It's an issue, but it's not the big issue. The real issue is, how do you get faculty to collaborate? I don't know. Been trying to do that for 19 years. It's hard because they're like cats that you have to herd. You have to work out issues of copyright. Creative Commons, who owns the copyright? Will they donate? Will they take royalties? Will you pay them in advance? These are things that I don't know the answers to. And that as we go forward, I'm going to engage the community to help me answer those questions. We have some experience with CALI fellowships in how these dynamics work, but this is a new sort of a thing, and we know we're entering populated territory already. There's another thing called prestige economics, because as much as people like money, they also like to get credit for their work. Now, there's all sorts of extant web models for prestige economics. Almost done. Slashdot's Karma, eBay's transaction ratings, even SSRN counts downloads, which faculty check every 5 minutes and maybe game the system a little bit, right? No, they don't do that. Amazon's review system, where you can not only review books, but you can review reviewers. Was this review helpful to you? Well, I can imagine plucking ideas like these and applying them to our E-Langdell system so that people can find quality, because that's what it's for. Those are signals for trustworthy or quality or for material that's similar to what I want, because I teach in a certain way. Because quality is a tough nut as well. There's a couple of ways we can look at that. Formal peer review. We pay people right now, the CEB, to review our lessons. Perhaps we can pay people or get volunteers to review these things. More likely, I think, is self-interested micro-communities. So if you have a group of faculty who all teach a certain, perhaps obscure or perhaps not so obscure, the cyber law professors, they're going to get together, they're going to gather their materials, they're going to post them, and they're going to subscribe to those materials, the way you can subscribe to a wiki page. So if somebody puts something in and calls it cyber law, they're going to take a look at it and see if that's something that they want in their personal collection of course materials. Self-interested micro-communities may be the way to solve some of these problems. And then there's the wisdom of crowds, which should be, what wisdom of crowds? What I mean here is students. All right? On every one of our CALI lessons, we have a button that students can press that sends us an email. And yes, they do that a lot. Now, sometimes they're saying things like, you have a typo, thank you. Other times they're saying, you know, I think the professor got this wrong. We have to write back. That's why you're a law student. Quite often they'll say things like, this is not clear. I can't follow the reasoning here. And we won't diss them for it. We'll go back to the author and say, you know, this could use some polishing. This could be better explained. This could use more explanation. And so it's sort of like open source again, that many eyes make all bugs shallow. Well, many people looking at the material with a feedback loop could, if it's carefully managed, result in improvement in that material. All right, in the home stretch. So why would institutions support such an idea like this? That's a picture of Nova. And the answer I give is one word: nimble. I love that word, nimble. Nimble. You want to be nimble in case the next inconvenient truth comes and hits your school. Right? What if it happened during exam week or 2 weeks before the end? You don't want to cancel the whole semester just because you've only got another couple of classes to go. If books and materials and classrooms are lost, but everything was digital, the students and faculty could scatter and yet still contact and talk to each other and limp along in a distance learning sort of way. All right? So all electronic course materials gives you a certain amount of nimbleness. And not just from hurricanes, but also from cute little chickens who may have a problem that they want to share with you. I'm not scared, but if you read any of the literature in this, it's coming! This is scary stuff. But there's actually a huge opportunity here, right? If we all have to go home for 19 months and not be anywhere near we can cough on each other, we're going to have a lot of free time in our hands. And I think that means a lot of people are going to want to go to school. And so if you're offering your materials online, you can sell them their education while they're staying away from the wisdom of those crowds. Why else nimble? Because it's a big, wide world, and there's new markets, and you want to deliver your stuff in a digital, distance learning sort of way. As a matter of fact, this whole idea came as a result of my thinking on Kodak. I was thinking, why isn't distance learning happening? You know, I'm Sisyphus, I'm pushing up the hill, and it keeps rolling back down over me. And I realized, well, there's these other barriers, and one of them is that not enough of the source material is available in an automatic or a rippable, mixable digital version. And so this is an attempt to solve that problem, to hopefully make distance learning possible, or at least easier as well. So what's the plan? Short-term plan is build a syllabus commons. We want to release software early and often so that people are engaged and we're getting feedback, because syllabi contain enormous amounts of interesting information, almost a Rorschach of how faculty conceive of courses. And we can use that to help get to the next step in the design. I'll be writing articles about these ideas at Caliopolis. We'll have a wiki and social space set up for our people to contribute, and we're going to be assembling an advisory board of really excited people who will be telling us, no, don't do it that way. do it this way. Because I don't think there are obvious answers in building this new community. This is going to be hard. So that's the plan. We think this is a big deal, but I also think it's an important thing, and I also think it's a really cool project. And I'm hoping that you'll help us out as we move forward. That's Rip, Mix, Learn. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Any questions? You have to absorb that for a moment. Who yelled? Beck. Do I foresee? I think for the time being, they're good enough. You can take a third of any class now and turn that into a distance learning portion of a class, and you don't have to call that a distance learning class. Right? You can also do the 1 semester per quarter for students in their second year and beyond as distance learning. And I'm willing to bet that right now not many law schools are bumping up against those limitations. So I think for the next couple of years, we've got plenty of room to maneuver. If you're talking about what I meant by disasters, I think if there was a disaster that shut down a bunch of law schools and they turned to a model like this, then they could petition, beg, sue the ABA in order to say, well, look, special circumstances, let us off on this situation. That's all I'm suggesting.
One thing, though, you got to remember, you got to have electricity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Or at least batteries. So I'm not imagining people doing this in refugee camps, but rather moving out of the disaster area, but yet still having net access. All right? Other questions? Well, I expect you're going to get lots of questions popping up in your head over the coming days or weeks. By all means, send them to me, and I'll blog about them, and I'll give you credit for those ideas. Because there's a lot of ideas packed in this presentation, and I kept on trying to yank things out, but I said, I want it to be a whole package. And so please engage us, in this conversation, because I think this will be fun. Last chance for questions, and let's get back. Great, thank you very much.